So now we begin to look at percent word problems. And so the first thing we want to review with percents is how we go from a percent to a decimal or vice versa. So recall that 25%, we move the decimal point 2 places and we get the decimal point 0.25. As another example, consider 8.4%. Again, it's always move it 2 places for percents, so that would become 0.084. Now, before we get into the percent word problems, we have to first tackle this issue of what are called percent questions. These are the questions that we'll find ourselves sometimes asking ourselves as we're doing percent problems. So those would be problems like some of those translate problems we did before, where we might have a question like, what is 24% of 70? So in these problems, what we don't know, so let's call that our variable n. Is means equals. Now 24% I write as a decimal, and remember the word of when it's written with a percentage or with a fraction means multiply. So 24% of 70 means multiply. And then at this point we just, to solve this equation, to find the unknown, we just have to multiply 24 and 70. And we get that the answer is 6.8. 6.8 is 24% of 70. Consider our second question here. 48 is what percent of 80? 48 is what percent of 80? So once again, we translate this to an equation. 48 is what percent? I don't know, so let's call it P. Of means multiply 80. So we have 48 equals P times 80. And so we want to solve the equation for the unknown, which in this case is P. So we divide both sides by 80 to get P by itself. And then we take and do the division, 48 divided by 80. And fortunately that comes out to be a nice number here, 0.6. Now that answer is a decimal. The P that we found in the equation here is a decimal because that's how it has to be written in the equation. But we want to answer the question, what percent is it? So remember, we moved 2 places to make it bigger, and so it would be 60%. 48 is 60% of 80. The last example is a question like this. 50 is 17.5% of what number? 50 is 17.5% of what number? So again, we're going to write it down, translate the statement into, or the question into an equation. So 50 is 17.5%, so that would be 0.175 of some unknown number. So we're multiplying, so we can just write the number down. So we get the equation 50 equals 0.175 n. And then we proceed to try and solve that equation. So that's going to require us to divide by 0.175. And here we'll once again encounter ourselves dividing by a decimal. So this is where we can once again use that same idea of, hey, we need to make the decimals go away. So to make the decimal in the bottom go away, I need to move it 3 places. So I'm also going to have to move it 3 places on the top, which means I'm going to have to add those zeros in. So we get 50,000 divided by 175. And then it turns out in this case we can divide a 25 out of both of those. When we divide 25 out of 50,000, we get 2,000. 25 out of 175, we get 7. And so our answer here is 2,000 over 7. That's the number missing number. Now we could write that number as a improper fraction or as a mixed number if we wanted to, or we can just leave it as we have it here as an improper fraction. 50 is 17.5% of the number 2,000 over 7.